The Kaweco Classic Piston Sport is a compact plastic fountain pen, which, as the name suggests, is a piston filler. And this pen was generously provided to me for review from goldspot.com. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you trusting me with your product. While this model is brand new to the Kaweco lineup, Kaweco is no stranger to piston filling fountain pens. In fact, the original Sport, which debuted back in the 1930s, was a piston-filling fountain pen, and Kaweco continued making piston fillers up into the 1970s with the V16. Last year, Kaweco decided to resurrect their piston-filling mechanism in the AL Sport, and this pen is a continuation of that new generation. At the time of recording this video, this pen is only available in black, but I suspect it will quickly be available in many other colors. The top finial has a dome shape, and in the middle we can see the Kaweco logo, which includes the initials of the two founders and CO for company. The cap is all one black plastic piece, and it has a series of facets which act as roll stops. On one facet, we do see Kaweco Sport written out in script. The cap is straight, and then we have a seam followed by a transition down to the barrel. More about that seam in just a little bit. The cap comes off in 1 and about a half turns to reveal a stainless steel gold-plated nib. There's scrollwork on the top. It reads Germany on one side, since 1886 on the other, the Kaweco logo, and I have this in an F for fine, but you can get this in a variety of other sizes. And on the back we can see a black plastic feed with a bit of branding towards the top. The grip section is fairly short and hourglass in shape, and then we have threads which are smooth to the touch. The barrel is then straight all the way to this metal band, and in the middle we can see a very generous ink window that has a subtle gray tint to it. Behind the metal band we have the end finial, which has ribs towards the tip, and on the top we can see Made in Germany with a dimple in the middle, and that's a remnant from the injection molding process. If I give the finial a twist, we can see that it doubles as a blind cap. When I first got this pen, the blind cap was a little bit squeaky on these threads. I added some silicone grease to these threads, and since I did, that sound has gone away. Removing the blind cap does reveal a piston knob, which has nice knurling on the outside to give you good grip, and on the top we can see the Kaweco logo. If I give the piston knob a counterclockwise turn, we will see the piston rod extend through that ink window, and turning the knob in the clockwise direction will retract the rod and allow us to bring ink into the pen. I did try to max fill this pen, and when I did, I got about 1.2 milliliters of ink, which is pretty significant considering its size and a really big upgrade over the standard Kaweco Sport. In the hand, the pen is very compact, lightweight, and well-balanced. It's suitable for short notes if you have small hands, but for medium and large hands, and also for longer writing sessions, you are going to want to post the cap, which luckily does post deeply and securely. It converts this pen into basically a full-size fountain pen. Even posted, it is a very lightweight pen with a center of gravity right around the crook of my hand. As with the AL Sport, this cap does post onto the blind cap, so if you're not careful, you could accidentally remove it. So there is a little bit of a learning curve to remember to pull this cap straight off the back. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Classic Piston Sport, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. And here they are posted. Before we disassemble the Classic Piston Sport, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with a few other compact fountain pens. First up, I have the TWSBI Vac Mini, which, as the name suggests, is a very compact fountain pen, though not quite as small as the Kaweco Sport. And this one does use a vacuum filling system instead of a piston filler, so this actually has about twice the ink capacity. Next up is one of my personal favorite pocket pens. This is the Hongdian M2. I've featured this a few times on the channel in an anodized aluminum finish, and I just picked it up in a beautiful brass finish. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see this pen featured on its own video. And then I have another Kaweco Sport. This is the standard version in brass. I just wanted to give you a side-by-side so you can see that it is virtually identical, at least in the exterior, to the Classic Piston Sport. And to round things off, I have the Pilot E95S. And this is really an outlier in terms of price compared to the rest of these pens, and that's because this one has a gold nib. And we'll take a look at that nib in just a moment. The two Kawecos are available with an optional clip. The Hongdian and the E95S both feature spring-loaded clips, and the TWSBI has a bent metal clip. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. All caps unscrew with the exception of the E95S. That one has a friction fit cap. And the E95S as well as TWSBI both are just a bit longer than the other three. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. All nibs are fully exposed in stainless steel with the exception of the E95S. This one has an inlaid 14 karat gold nib. The E95S grip section tapers all the way back. The TWSBI has a flare-up followed by a straight portion to a flare-up to threads. The Hongdian starts with a flare-up and then it has a taper to threads. And the two Kawecos have short hourglass-shaped grip sections. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post deeply and securely. The E95S is the longest pen when it's posted, and the TWSBI is the only one with a screw-to-post cap. In order to disassemble the Classic Piston Sport, no tools are required, but you might find gripping materials are useful to have. The cap unscrews, and if we take a look inside, we can see at the bottom there is a plastic cap liner. It's not very easy to remove, so for regular cleaning, I would run this under warm water, and if you have really stubborn ink stains, you might want to soak it with a little bit of mild detergent. The nib and feed can be unscrewed from the grip section, and they're held together in this nib collar. There is an O-ring. This one does have a tendency to fall off, so be careful not to lose it. And then the nib and feed can be pulled straight out of this nib collar. And they separate just like that. The blind cap unscrews from the back. And at the bottom of these threads, there are two flats, one there and one there. I haven't had any success getting a hold of those flats with any of my regular fountain pen wrenches. I've tried TWSBI wrenches, the Asvine multi-wrench, as well as a Wingsung wrench. None of them fit. I've also tried calipers, but I find that when I'm trying to twist with the calipers that it just slips off, and I'm a little bit afraid that I'll start damaging this pen. So right now, I would leave this barrel in this shape. If I do find a way to remove the piston unit, I'll be sure to post an update. In terms of cleaning and maintenance, you are going to want to access it through the grip section. The grip section does not unscrew. And luckily there is a decent sized hole, so you can access that with a blunt needle syringe to push some water into the barrel. And you can also put some silicone grease on a toothpick and then insert that and paint the walls and then run the piston head up and down. And in doing that, you should be able to grease up the piston head decently. So for right now, this pen is fully disassembled. In order to reassemble, I'm going to start with the nib and feed. The feed does have a ridge on the back, which helps you orient the nib, and those get pushed straight into the nib collar. The collar is not keyed, which does worry me a little bit for long-term durability. If you over-tighten the nib collar into the grip section, there's a chance that the feed will start to freely spin and you won't be able to remove the nib collar. And then we can reattach the blind cap as well as our regular cap. And at this point, we're ready to ink up. Inking up the Classic Kaweco Sport, today I selected Waterman Tender Purple, which is a nicely saturated purple ink, one of my favorites, and I think it should look very beautiful with this ink window. We'll take the cap off the bottle of ink, as well as the pen. And then we're also going to remove the blind cap. Extend the piston rod all the way down. Place the nib into the ink. and screw up the piston. To get a full fill, I'm going to expel the ink and then drop the piston rod one more time. Kaweco does recommend dripping a few drops of ink out of the piston in order to avoid burping, and I have actually noticed that that does tend to help with this pen. So I'm guessing that the feed maybe gets a little bit oversaturated when you fill this up. Let me go ahead and wipe off our nib. Put the cap back on our bottle. Put the blind cap back on our pen, as well as a regular cap. And at this point, we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Kaweco Classic Piston Sport. Cap unscrews and I am going to post it. And today we have a stainless steel fine nib. And it's a very well-tuned nib. It's smooth and wet with just a hint of feedback so you can tell what kind of paper you're writing with. If I have any criticism of this nib, it's that it is a pretty stiff steel nib, which honestly is okay. I think in this form factor, you're probably going to use this pen mostly for short notes and not long form, slow, methodical writing. In terms of ink, today we have one from Waterman. And it is called Tender Purple. For flex, I'm going to turn the page. As I mentioned, it's a pretty stiff steel nib. When you push down, you do spread the tines a little bit, but mostly you're just pushing out more ink. And for reverse writing, more feedback, but not really scratchy. The feed is having a little bit of trouble keeping up towards the end, so I would say if you're in a pinch for a thinner line, you could consider reverse writing, but it might not be the most reliable experience. So what do I think of the Kaweco Classic Piston Sport? I love many aspects of this pen. I love its compact nature. I found as I grow my fountain pen collection that I kind of have a soft spot for pocket-sized fountain pens. And on top of that, I also really like that it has a large ink capacity. The combination of a compact pen with a large ink capacity isn't something that you see often on the market. I can only count a handful of pens that manage to pull off this feat, and this one has just added to that list. And on top of it having a large ink capacity, it also has a very usable ink window, which you can not only use to tell your ink level, but actually tell the color of your ink as well. And on top of that, it has a very well-tuned nib. It's smooth and wet with just a little bit of feedback. As I mentioned, the only downside I have with this nib is that it is fairly stiff. And while the pen is very compact in the hand, for me, it's just long enough that I could use it for short notes. And luckily, the cap posts beautifully. It makes for a full-size fountain pen that's very comfortable to use. It is very lightweight, so it kind of disappears in your hand as you're writing. But I do see areas for improvement with this pen, and the posting is one of them. Just like with the aluminum Sport, there is a chance if you have this blind cap not fully tightened down that you might remove it when you are posting and unscrewing the cap. So that does take a little bit of a learner's curve to remember to just pull it straight off. Also, another thing that I've noticed with this blind cap is if you don't have it fully tightened down, you may accidentally unscrew the blind cap instead of removing the regular cap to write with the pen. That's something that could have been avoided if it was a reverse threaded cap, but that also might be a little bit awkward to operate. And then the other areas for improvement with this pen are largely around the maintenance and durability of it. I wish that you could remove the piston unit more easily. I think long term, there could be a chance that the piston will get stuck and you'll have to send this out to a special shop for repairs because you won't be able to service it yourself. That, and I wish that the feed was keyed to the nib collar so that there wasn't a risk of the nib collar getting stuck inside this grip section. Or even better, it would be great if the grip section could be removed so that you could have easier access to the barrel as well as the piston head. And then the only other areas for improvement that I have with this pen are common with the standard Kaweco Classic Sport. I think that, especially at this price point, they really should include the optional clip with this pen. It's a little bit of nickel and diming to say that you have to purchase that separately for about $15. And then lastly is this seam on the cap, which I pointed out previously. That seam is a result of how this cap is molded. The cap in the tool is positioned something like this, where the top of the tool goes down and the bottom of the tool comes up, and they meet just about there, which creates what's called a parting line. And to me, that could have been better concealed if the cap instead was molded in this orientation, where the top of the tool went down and the bottom of the tool went up, and they lined up with one of these facets. But overall, I do really like this pen. I think that it is great to see Kaweco innovating on really what's become a much loved design. And if you're in the market for a compact fountain pen with a large ink capacity, and especially if you're a fan of the standard Kaweco design, this one really should be on your short list. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.